city side. Woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Singing and praying with my mind set on spirit. Singing and praying with my mind set on spirit. Singing and praying with my mind set on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking, I'm walking and talking with my mind set on spirit. Walking and talking with my mind set on spirit. Walking and talking with my mind set on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Woke up this morning, yeah, woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Woke up this morning with my mind set on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. That got our blood flowing, and here's something I want you all to know this morning. In India Ari's word, you are worthy. I know exactly what you're thinking. I've had those thoughts a million times. I can see the question that's behind your eyes. Oh, you're searching for your peace of mind. Now listen up to this truth. You are me and I am you. Every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, worthy woman. Every one of us is worthy. I know your life, I feel your pain. I know your joys and your shame. Sometimes it feels like life walks over you, oh, like you're a penny on the ground. But either on the ground or in your purse, the smallest piece still holds its worth. Every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, worthy woman, every one of us is worthy. Baby, boy, every man, you're worthy. Every one of us is worthy. Worthy of love, worthy of life, worthy of saying no when something don't feel right. This is a song for you, for all the ups and downs that life will put you through. Oh, now listen up to this truth. You are me and I am you, and every one of us is worthy. Baby, girl, every one of us is worthy. Baby boy, worthy man, oh, every one of us is worthy. Baby girl, worthy woman, every one of us is worthy. Baby boy, worthy man, every one of us is worthy. Every one of us is worthy. Everyone is worthy.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Greg. What a beautiful message to start with this morning. Every one of us is worthy. I'm not familiar with that song, but I know the artist, and it was beautiful. Thank you. So good morning, Cityside. Welcome to our Sunday morning service and celebration. It's so nice to see everyone here on this cool Sunday morning. Thank you for being with us today, however you're joining us. It's lovely again to have you here, and we also want to warmly welcome the live streamers that have joined us as well. If you are on the live stream and you're in the area, we invite you to come and join us in person at some point. It's just so nice to have the energy of bodies in the room, especially as it's cooling down. It's actually pretty cool in here this morning. So if you want to follow along today, we have the Sunday online bulletin. You have it, you can scan the QR code. You'll find it on your screen if you're on the live stream, and you have it on these cards on your chairs if you're in the room. That'll allow you in a little while, you can follow along with the service, speak the vision statement, the giving statement, and just have access to all of the different links and important information today. We really invite everyone to spread the word about Cityside. We are a community supporting organization. We are here to support the community and to be a part of that. And to do that, we really need people to know that we're here and to know what we're doing. So we really want you to invite people to come in person. Share the live stream link, share the recordings, check in on whatever social media you participate in. And just really let people know that we're here so that we can be of service in the ways that we're here to be. At Cityside, we practice New Thought and Wisdom teachings, and we're affiliated with an organization called the Centers for Spiritual Living. We honor all paths and provide a supportive community where you can explore just your own journey and your own spirit that's moving within you. We have licensed spiritual practitioner Don Mannery. Today, he is supporting us by holding vigil, which is where he just opens up a sacred space and sits in a meditative state throughout service to just allow us to have a more powerful and transformative experience. Our October theme is surrendering to what is. As I was kind of going through the material for this week, I knew the theme, and that just kind of stopped me again today, just surrendering to what is. I think it's such a powerful theme, and as I think more about it, I just kept thinking about all the areas in my life that I work on, whether it's spiritual, whether it's my work life, my parenting life, and just my financial, my love life, whatever it is that I'm working on, there's always some practice of surrender that seems to be needed for me to move forward in whatever way I'm sort of practicing or learning or expanding. And so I think this is just such a great practical theme that we have going this month. And today, our Reverend Aimee Daniels will be sharing her talk called Opening to Where Life is Leading You. But before we get to that, we'll take a few minutes to just look around the room, find someone that you don't know or don't know well, and just go introduce yourself. You have about 2 minutes to do this, and maybe share with each other. There's some new art up this week. What caught your eye when you walked in the room today? If you can start making your way back to your seats. We're going to take a few minutes here and find that mission statement on the online bulletin. Okay, so if you made your way to the bulletin, I will just ask you to join me in speaking aloud our vision and mission statement. We envision an empowered community that is living in a world of unconditional love in action. Our mission is to create safe spaces to explore and deepen our faith, grow in spiritual relationship, and connect with our authentic nature.
Hello, I'm Connie Hodek, one of your licensed spiritual practitioners. And this morning I have a reading, a short meditation, and then a benedictive prayer. These words are from the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Instead of trying to free myself by constantly quieting the mind, perhaps I should be asking why the mind is so active. If that motivation were to be removed, the struggle would be over. This realization opened the door for an entirely new and exciting dimension to my practices. As I explored it inwardly, the first thing I noticed was that most of my mental activity revolved around my likes and dislikes. If my mind had a preference toward or against something, it actively talked about it. I could see that it was these mental preferences, that were creating much of the outgoing dialogue about how to control everything in my life. In a bold attempt to free myself from all of that, I decided to stop listening to all the chatter about my personal preferences and instead start the willful practice of accepting what the flow of life was presenting me. I found these practices very powerful, and they definitely served to quiet the mind. I clearly remember deciding that from now on, if life was unfolding in a certain way, the only reason I was resisting was because of my personal preference. I would let go and let life be in charge. I began to see this as a great experiment. What would happen if I just inwardly surrendered my resistance and let the flow of life be in charge? The rules of this experiment were very simple. If life brought events in front of me, I would treat them as they came to take me beyond myself. If my personal self complained, I would use each opportunity to simply let him go and surrender to what life was presenting me. This was the birth of what I came to call the Surrender Experiment. Now, find yourself comfortable in your chair. Okay, feet on the floor, back straight. Oh, take 3 deep breaths in your own timing. Relaxing your neck, dropping your shoulders. Let your hands relax in your lap. Allow the chair to support you. And breathe deeply. And notice the mind when it starts to chatter. Just let it chatter. You continue to breathe and relax. Now slowly come back into the room. Remain relaxed and open to the prayer. In this perfect moment, I know that the Divine Spirit, the creative force that is the source of all, the universal energy and unconditional love that I call God, and that love is the source of light, joy, prosperity, abundance, strength, courage, and wisdom that is ever present, ever flowing through our lives. I am one with this divine spirit. And as I am one, so too each of you are one with the divine spirit. This love that is the light and joy within us, the prosperity and abundance that surrounds us, the strength, courage, and wisdom that guides us and carries us forward with each and every breath we take and each and every heartbeat. We are one. From this place of oneness, I speak a blessing over all who are listening to this service, regardless of when or where or how, for we are all one, always and ever. May this day be a day of ease and grace. May it emanate the gifts of light, joy, love, and divine wisdom in every interaction, knowing that the gifts return many times over in the exact form that is needed to each and every one of us. I speak a blessing over the Cityside team that is bringing this service to life. Blessings over Reverend Aimee Daniels for the message she brings to us today. Blessings over all who have joined us in-house and all who have joined us online. And for all who are holding the high watch for Cityside, doing all the seen and unseen things that need to happen to make this spiritual community in service to Chicago and the world. With gratitude, I know you are loved and you are safe and guided by the divine spirit. Oh, releasing these words into the action of the law, together we say, and so it is. Amen.
Good morning once again, Cityside. Got a message for you. You can cry a million tears, and you can think a million years, but if you think that love and time will change your ways, don't wait too long. When your morning turns to night, you can always find the light. But if you think that time is gonna change your ways, don't wait too long. Maybe I got a lot to learn. Time can just slip away. Maybe you just got to release it all before you find your way. Take a chance, play your part. Take a chance, it might heal your heart. If you think that time won't change your ways, don't wait too long.
Good morning, Cityside. Bobby, it's so wonderful to have you here with us today. Always love your energy. Surrender. I think I need to surrender the talk because I was sitting here and I'm like, all these other things I could say were rattling around in my head. So we're going to see what comes out here. But Connie kicked us off with the reading, and Michael Singer, in his book, The Surrender Experiment, talks about the voice in our head. And the first time he realized he had a voice in his head, he was just sitting with his brother-in-law. He was kind of a hippie. It was the early 70s. And there was a long period of silence. And he realized in this period of silence that his mind was just yammering, and he looks at his brother-in-law and he says, "Do you have that voice in your head too?" And his brother-in-law said, "Yes, I do." And so he became obsessed with this. He became obsessed with understanding what did philosophy have to say about this? What did the various religious paths have to say about it? And he ended up being given a book on Zen. And then he just kept being led to other teachers. And one of them was Paramahansa Yogananda, which I would say was kind of his primary teacher for a long time. But then he had some teachers in the world of form. And the reason I share this is because he was on this obsessive journey to figure out the thing that was going to help him eliminate the voice in his head. And I like what Connie said in the reading about that he finally realized that that voice in his head was always talking about what it liked or didn't like about what was going on in the moment. And I don't know if you relate to that or not, but I think I can relate to that. Or sometimes my mind is like yammering about what do I need to do today, right? And I always know when I'm meditating, if the mind is yammering, that means I need to be doing exactly what I'm doing in the moment. So that voice in your head is your personal self. And I want to contrast that from your spiritual self, because our personal self is our identity. Some people like to call it our ego. But our spiritual self is that part of us, that eternal part of us that is bigger than what's happening in the world of form. And Paramahansa Yogananda calls the journey to discovering the spiritual self, self-realization. And we know that there have been many teachers. Jesus is a great example, Buddha, Muhammad. They all had this self-realization, this realization of their spiritual self, and were able to transcend the human experience through that realization. So how do we start to connect with that spiritual self? We start with the voice in our head, right? With noticing the voice in our head. The best way to do that is to meditate. We talk about meditating all the time. And prayer. I want to add prayer to that because I think prayer always helps. But just being willing to let go of our judgments, our opinions, our preferences. And that's so much easier to say than to do, isn't it? And I think it can be helpful to name whatever that voice in our head is so that we can just start to notice, like, hey, my personal self, or give it a name, Miss Bossy Pants thinks, right? But it can be helpful to name it, because then we separate it from who we really are. We think that voice is us, but it's not. But I want to actually invite you to go a step deeper today. I want to invite you to consider doing a surrender experiment with your own life, like Michael Singer did. Not trying to negate a thought, not trying to powerfully move yourself through whatever's happening, which we can want to do that with this new thought teaching, right? If I just set my intention and I have my will on something, I'm going to go do it, and that's true. But it's like what Reverend Linda talked about last week. That's really, we're in the consciousness of by me, like I'm doing it, instead of letting things happen through us or as us, which is when we're really connected to our spirit. And one of the things Michael Singer shared is that he finally came to the point where he realized that all his pushing, like he was extreme. He would eat a garden salad every day. That's all he would allow himself to eat, because he thought if he ate less, he would have a deeper meditation. And he would force himself and push himself in the same way that we force and push ourselves in the rest of our life sometimes. But he finally realized, like, life has an idea, and I'm actually not in control. He lived in the country. As I said, he was kind of a hippie at that time, probably still is, I don't know. But he had built this house in the middle of nowhere, and his friends helped him build it, so it was, logs or whatever it was. And his entire intention was, I want to be alone so that I can have a deeper realization of my spirit. But God, spirit, whatever your word is, life had a different idea for him. People started to show up to meditate with him. And then once when he was on vacation, he came home and someone had moved into his house. And then another time someone had built a house on his property. And ultimately, they were visited by a lot of spiritual teachers there too. Ultimately, one of the spiritual teachers said, you're supposed to have a temple on this land. This is supposed to be a place that people come to visit. So that happened too. And he said, I finally realized that life was always trying to show me what I needed, but I wasn't listening. And he said, so I realized I needed to surrender, right? I needed to surrender to bring something new forth. And his story is so inspiring because he even had this major setback. So he started following this life experience, and he ended up birthing 3 or 4 companies that just sort of seemed to start on their own. And then ultimately, one of them became very valuable, and it sold, and it became a public company. And at some point during that, someone on their team had done some things that were illegal, and they were being investigated, and they must have known they were being investigated. And they went to the FBI and said, hey, the leadership at this place is doing this. And so what ended up happening is they had this big FBI raid, and he ended up ultimately stepping down from the company. He hadn't done anything, but he said, I realized I was in the way of the good of all the people who worked for this company, and I just have to stay in the truth that I didn't do anything, and that I'm going to be cleared, and that this is for me, because it's burning off all the parts of myself that need to shift. And I found that story so inspiring, because it's so easy to want to be comfortable, right? To not go through the bad times that we have in our life. But what really happens is those times change us. Those times change us. They might be super painful, but they change us. So I want to invite you to play a little bit with your own life, to experiment a little bit. And I want to encourage you to being open to seeing what's happening in your life, to really noticing it. Think about being open, like just even the physicality of being open versus the physicality of being closed. Like when we're closed, we're resistant, we're kind of saying, I'm not available to anything. But when we're open, we're able to go with the flow of life. Rilke said, I want to unfold. I don't want to stay folded anywhere, because where I am folded, there I am a lie. I love that. Where I am folded, there I am a lie. Lao Tzu said, the hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail. Whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. I think that's beautiful too. So we want to be open. We want to allow life, spirit, whatever your word is, to unfold and to show us where it wants to take us. So I want to share a few principles and some spiritual qualities that you can embrace while you're on this surrender experiment. And the first is that everything in life has something to teach you. Even the experiences that you don't like have something to teach you. And what if life actually has the wisdom to know what it is that you need, where you need to grow, where you need to be stretched? You know, some of the experiences we have, we would call them good, some of them we would call bad, but all of them have the opportunity within them to stretch us and grow us. So you can embrace the learning you're being invited to, or you can reject it. I was thinking when I was writing this about how sometimes you get that same lesson over and over. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? I can think of so many examples in my life, but you know, a lot of times we only see things in retrospect, right? Sometimes we need to have that space and to be able to look back to say like, oh, that's what that was about. I was thinking as I was sitting here, I was going to tell a different story, but a different one popped in, so I'm going to share it. So when I left my corporate job a little over 10 years ago, my boss knew, I had two bosses. I used to call them my good boss and my bad boss. They were so different from each other. The one guy was like just this big, tough dude that like cut off their head, right? And the other guy was a big teddy bear who was like, hey, come here, let's everyone go have a beer, right? And so the tough one, I had really been doing a lot of things to help him. And he had promised me, we knew we were going to restructure, he had promised me that he was going to help me figure out what I was going to do next, but he didn't. And so I was given a choice, and my other boss said, hey, just come to New York for a while. Come to New York, Aimee. And on Friday I said yes, and on Monday I went in and said, I'm going home. I want to go home. Because what I was finally able to be honest with myself about was that my heart was no longer in the life that I was living, because the environment I worked in, and I was living on the East Coast, I was living in Washington, D.C., they didn't really care about people, you know, and I had all different kinds of people who worked on my team, but, you know, some of them were tellers and they didn't make much money. And I was like, it doesn't feel right to me that we can't help people have a better living wage when I know people above me are making $1 jillion a year. And so it was the thing that forced me to get honest with myself and to have the courage to quit. And I didn't have a plan, but it was the thing that gave me the courage to quit because I realized my heart wasn't in it. And to move forward from that, I don't think I thought about it at this time. I thought I was being very rational and I had a plan, but the truth is I had to surrender because I had no idea what I was going to do for work, what my life was going to look like. And I think that was the lesson that I needed to learn, and to let go of the idea of who I thought I was supposed to be. And I remember I called one of my friends when it happened, and I was in ministerial school then, and he said to me, well, you know, people always quit their jobs when they're in ministerial school. I mean, I'm like, no, I didn't know. No one told me. But I just share that because if I had been rigid in my idea about what my life or my work needed to look like, then I wouldn't have been open to what wanted to come through. So everything in life has something to teach you. And I guess the other thing I want to say about that story is I remember someone that I had worked with in Chicago before I moved said, hey, you really got screwed. And I'm like, I just don't even see it that way. I'm like, I chose it. I could have taken a different job. I don't know what it would have been in the bank, but I never felt when that happened that I got screwed. I felt like God knocked on the door and I actually opened it, right? And that's the part of the story I really wanted to share with you. So everything has something to teach you. Second, just to begin to notice, like, what are the recurring themes? What are the things that keep coming up for you? And when I say that, I mean, like, things that are drawing you. I think about how I found Centers for Spiritual Living. I was looking for a deeper expression of what I was studying. I'd been going to Unity, and I loved it. But I felt like I needed to go on a deeper personal path, and I just kept seeing this, Chicago Center for Spiritual Living everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to go. In fact, Ted probably remembers in the back of the room, like, he's like, are we going to Unity today? I'm like, nope, I'm going to Chicago Center for Spiritual Living. But we all have things like that all the time, because life is always giving us signs about where we are wanting to go. I'm sure everyone's heard this story before. People talked about, like, when you see a car you like and then you see it everywhere. It's the same thing with the things that are calling you in life. Once you get the little, lead in your head, then you're going to see it everywhere. And if we're surrendered, we need to be willing and open to following that. And there is this invisible hand of spirit that is moving us, whether we see it or we don't see it. What we need is always provided when we need it. Michael Singer says that in his book about all these examples about when they needed money to do things and it showed up. Mother Teresa said that. She's like, I don't have to fundraise. God provides exactly what I need, exactly when I need it. And so we need to trust that there is this invisible hand, even if it's change. Right? Because change can be incredibly scary for us because we fear loss. Right? We fear loss. But continuing just to share a little more about me personally, like, I feel like the invisible hand moved me into my day job too. Like, I wasn't going out and looking for what I do in my work now. People started asking me to help companies. And so one of them, the guy was involved with this organization that I run peer groups for now. And I just feel so blessed that that's where I was led, because it's allowed me to have the freedom to have a ministry. And I learn every single day. It forces me to stay on my growing edge. And so I'm grateful for that. So pay attention to where the invisible hand is leading you. Pay attention to what's opening up, and pay attention to where things are not opening up, where you're pushing too hard, where the doors don't seem to open, or it seems like a door is closing. And also, just to be willing to follow flashes of inspiration. We all get them, but we don't listen to them. Greg and Bobby, as musicians, can tell you when they create music, it comes from a different place. And that's really what it is like when you follow a flash of inspiration. And you probably get them all the time. The question is, do you follow them when they happen? I led a retreat this week for Vistage, and I was leading the workshop, which is unusual. Normally you have an outside speaker, they come in and lead it, but I didn't have anybody, so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do it. And I was just like terrified that it was gonna be a flop, right? And so we were doing work on like people's saboteurs and stuff like that, and I'm like, what if I make them play act their saboteurs? It was like a flash of inspiration. It was an absolute riot, and they had fun. But if I hadn't followed that, if I had been like, no, I got to be serious, I got to have structure, then it would have been a different experience. So follow those flashes of inspiration when they come up. The other thing that really inspires me about Michael Singer's story that I want to focus on as well is he was really committed to his practice, but he became even more committed to being of service. He came to see the things that were happening as the place where he was showing up to be available to this invisible hand. And I think we all have that opportunity, is to just notice, where am I right now? And, who am I meant to be present for? who am I meant to serve in this moment? I was at this retreat, and we're sitting around the fire pit and outside, and another group came and they joined us, and everybody was having s'mores and stuff. And so these other people said, what do you guys do? And someone explained what the group was about. So this lady walks up to me and she says, hey, I want to talk to you. She's like, you lead this group of people? I'm like, I do. And she was telling me about her business, and quite a successful business. And then she said, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I got this inspiration to start a podcast about 10 months ago. And it's about it's really to give people hope and whatever. And she goes, I have 500,000 followers in 10 months. And I'm like, that's incredible. That's exactly, I go, you got to go listen to Michael Singer. And I'm like, it's exactly what we're studying right now, just following what is showing up. She got that inspiration. She wanted to be of service, and people responded to it. So I can't talk about surrender without talking about trust, because I think lack of trust is the great derailer of spiritual paths in my observation, because we all can cling to what is, and we can all try to micromanage our lives and not trust. But it's all about trust, right? To really surrender, you are walking in trust and faith that the way is going to present itself, like the leap of faith. And so what I want to invite you into is to trust enough that to allow what is happening to unfold, to stay open, to not close. If we're centered, think about yoga. Does anybody do yoga? When you are centered in yoga, it's like nothing is going to move you, right? And that is what being on the spiritual path, when you're surrendered and you're centered in your spirit, nothing is going to move you off your course. Mark Nepo, if you don't know him, he's an amazing poet, wrote a beautiful piece called We Tend to Cling. Things that matter come and go, but being touched and feeling life move on, we tend to cling and hold on, not wanting anything to change. Of course, this fails and things do change. Often we're stubborn enough to go after what we think is leaving, trying to manipulate and control the flow of life. Of course, this fails too. We can't stop life from flowing. So we are left with feeling what was and what is, and we call the difference loss. But all the clinging and holding on makes it worse. Now new things come, and some of us anticipate the loss and just let the things of life go by without feeling them at all. I have done all these things, but when clear enough and open enough, I try to let things in, to let things touch me. I try not to poke and pull at them as they move through. It doesn't eliminate loss, but when trusting enough to let this happen, I am tuned like a harp held up to the wind. Isn't that beautiful? He's a brilliant poet, if you haven't, Mark Nepo. So trust, easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. So let's talk about another spiritual quality we want to cultivate in our surrender experiment, and that is patience. The Bible talks about waiting on the Lord, and what that actually means metaphysically is like listening to the voice of Spirit. So it means listening for that voice of Spirit to come forward. And when we're surrendered, that's what we're actually doing. We're waiting for that voice of Spirit to drop in for us, right? But when things are difficult or not clear in our life, that can be much harder, can't it? And Lao Tzu said, I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, and compassion. These are your greatest treasures. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with the way things are. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with the way things are. Patience with both friends and people who don't share your point of view would be a currently relevant explanation of that. So stay open, be patient, allow things to emerge. And I want to take a moment before I close just to talk about the times in our life that are difficult, because we all have them, right? We lose someone we love, we're sick, someone else is sick, we lose a job. I mean, there's a long list, right? And when you're in a particularly painful period of your life, I know I've had them, I don't have time to talk about any of them right now, but it can be hard to accept and surrender. Just accept and surrender what's happening. Wayne Muller said, "The more spacious and large our fundamental nature, the more bearable the pains in living." So we're cultivating our fundamental nature through our spiritual practice, through having a deeper knowing of our spiritual self. Got a little Facebook reverb going there. So there's a story of an aging Hindu master who had an apprentice who he was growing tired of. And he decides he's going to teach this guy a lesson. And so he tells him to put salt in a glass of water and to drink it. And he says to him, "How does it taste?" And the young man said, "It tastes bitter." So the master chuckles, and then he takes the young man out and he says, "Dump the glass in the lake and then fill yourself up with another glass." And he said, "How does it taste now?" And he says, "It tastes good." He said, "Can you taste the salt?" He said, "No." And then the master sat him down and he said, this young man reminded him so much of himself. And he took his hands and said, "The pain of life is pure salt, no more, no less. But the amount of bitterness we taste depends on the container we put the pain in. So when you are in pain, the only thing you can do is to enlarge your sense of things. Stop being a glass, be a lake." So that's our invitation, to set aside our smaller self, the smaller idea of yourself, that personal self, and to become a lake, to be available for your spiritual self, to expand the container of your life. What you need will be provided exactly when you need it. All is well. So let's take this into prayer. I just invite you to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart if that feels good to you. Just take a deep breath in and out. And just connect to your spiritual self, your higher self, your spirit, whatever your word is for it. And in this moment, I just know that we are one with Spirit, this infinite, eternal presence and power for good, this infinite possibility of a life, which always and everywhere is working on our behalf. I know that I am one with the Spirit, just as each of the people hearing my words are one with this Spirit. So I speak my word from this place of oneness, just absolutely knowing and affirming for each of us that we release this voice in our head, that we embrace the spaciousness of spirit instead, that we embrace that everything in life has something to teach us. We notice the themes that are happening in our life, the things that keep coming up, and we freely step into those things that are calling us, that we trust Spirit to bring forth that which wants to happen as our lives. And I know that we acknowledge the invisible hand that is moving us, and we give thanks for it. I just know that we are committed to surrender, that we are committed to allowing our spirit to lead us, to lean into trust, to practice patience, and just to allow a deeper idea to emerge, a deeper awareness and consciousness of the spiritual nature of our lives. Spiritual nature of all things, this presence and power that is in, as and through everything and everyone. Just knowing our oneness. I'm just so grateful to speak these words of truth. I'm just so grateful to know that this prayer is already fulfilled, that God already knows the answer to your individual prayer, and that is coming forth now in the world of form. I give great thanks for this time together in community, in love and grace. And I give thanks knowing this prayer is fulfilled. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Aimee. That was beautiful. I kept thinking of times in my life that have been so challenging, and the tendency is always to want to turn around towards what doesn't feel good but feels familiar, because change can be so scary, and these ideas of listening and trusting and just that patience, that the answers are always there. It's a very powerful message, and I love the analogy with the glass versus the lake. Thank you. So I mentioned earlier in our service that Cityside is a community supporting community, and we are also a community supported organization. And so we practice conscious giving, which allows us to make these Sunday services available, as well as other offerings that we do throughout the weeks. And yeah, there's just so much that goes into to expansion. We're really looking to grow and expand as a community, and we could just really use everyone's gifts in order to make a lot of these things possible that we seek to do. There are several easy ways to give. You can find these. Again, you can scan the QR code on the sheets in front of you on your chairs. You can also get those again online. The easiest way to give is to text. You can text the word "give" to the number here on the orange flyer, and that's also available on your screen. And if you have a donation that you'd like to give in person today, you can do that at the box here to my left. So please, again, if you scan the QR code to get to the affirmation, you can join me in our giving affirmation as we bless our gifts. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am.
Now will your heart and soul say yes? Will your spirit still say yes? If there is more that I desire of you, will your heart and soul say
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, Cityside, for your gifts. They truly are a blessing. So if you're joining us for the first time today, we sincerely want to welcome you and thank you for being here. You can subscribe to our newsletter by following the link in the bulletin or by going to the website. And if you're here, stay in the room, introduce yourselves, and say hello. We'd love to get to know you. So a couple of quick announcements. On October 31st, we'll be having a remembrance service honoring our deceased loved ones. In keeping with the Day of the Dead celebrations and All Souls and All Saints Day from the Catholic Church, we'll have the opportunity to remember our loved ones through song, ritual, and prayer. All are invited to bring a picture or a memento of your loved one to be displayed alongside an interfaith altar that we will have created specifically for this service. All losses, either loved ones, beloved pets, even separation or estrangement from those who are still living, can be remembered through this communal sharing of grief, joy, and remembrance. So please consider joining us for that. And are you looking to have a breakthrough in your prosperity consciousness? As our gift to you, Cityside will be offering spiritual economics on a love offering basis beginning on Monday, November the 1st. It'll be facilitated by our Reverend Aimee and Reverend Jeff, and will be based on a book by Eric Butterworth. It will help you gain a greater understanding of the basic metaphysical principles which govern our financial wellness and how to apply them to your own life to heal any limitation which may exist. So there's more information about that on the website. A special thanks today to our Sunday team for making the service possible: E.T., Keith, Dom, Bobby, and Greg, John, Connie, Don, Ted, Reverend Linda, Reverend Aimee. And join us next week as we continue our October theme with Reverend Daryl Jones. And finally, if you'd like to get prayer following today's service, Connie and Don are in the back, and they'll be offering that. And if you're joining us online, you can request prayer through the website under the support tab. So until next week, Cityside, be blessed, enjoy your week, and we hope to see you here again next week.
I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. I am only before God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I'll see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. I am only before God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only before God. Yes, I'm only before God. Yes, I'm only before God. Happy Sunday, Cityside.